Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I get a lot of emails from viewers who are wanting to supplement their income with handmade products. They're getting ready for retirement or want to help contribute to the family finances because things are tough. And that made me think about where I started with my journey into handmade sales. Several years ago, I had a guy come in with lots of tiny little scraps of fabric like this. Sometimes they were long strips, but they were no wider than this. Back then, I was still a fabric shop, but I was really struggling financially. And I was struggling to come to terms with the fact that I was going to have to fold my business. At around about the same time, this guy came in with all of these fabric offcuts and asked if I wanted them, otherwise they were going to the tip. I had no idea what I was going to do with them, but I had loads of zips that I needed to get rid of in my store, so I figured I might as well make some small pouches. I ended up making hundreds of them, and I sold them for $10 each, and I think I even had buy one for 10 or 3 for 30 at the time. So I sold lots and lots of them. I didn't even have labels at the time, so this is way back before I started taking my handmade business seriously. So from little pieces like this, I just made up tiny little pouches. People use them for coins, lipsticks, whatever bits and pieces they needed to put in there. The fabric types that I like to use are these sample swatches. There's lots of them. I don't care what they look like, and I don't care what sizes they are either. So this one here was a very small piece of fabric. I'm going to turn it around the other way and make a pouch this way, but with all of the others, I'll just make a slightly longer pouch. When I first got fabric like this, I really wasn't very inspired at all. I thought they're plain, they're boring. What am I going to do? I came up with the idea of making the zippered pouches, and I haven't looked back since. So today I'm going to show you how to make a no frills zippered pouch. There's no lining, there's no expertise or anything that's going into these. There's barely any love that goes into them, but it's a great way to use up heaps of scrap fabric, whether you use quilting cotton or upholstery fabric. You can do the same thing. And if you do markets, or if you plan on doing markets, it's a great way to draw people into your stand as well. I used to have them in a trolley out the front of the shop, just had that $10 price tag on them, and people would rummage through them. So it was a great draw card for people. You can still have your good high quality products on your stand, but have something to draw the people in to your stand that is nice and cheap and affordable. And that will help encourage those people to look further on your stand. And that is what happened with me. So this is what we're making today. It's just a tiny little zippered pouch, no frills. It's just a budget pouch. We've got a regular dress zip at the top. I'm using up a heap of old shop stock that I've still got from years ago. And all it is just the wrong side of the fabric on the inside. I'll be using my overlocker today. If you don't have an overlocker, then you can zigzag your edges, but it does take a little bit longer. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how many I can make in an hour and what my potential income is per hour. You'll be quite surprised to hear that. But these are incredibly quick and easy to make. No frills, just a really budget little zippered pouch that you could even sell for just $5 if you wanted to. You know, these little bags were the beginning of my handmade journey, and I haven't made any unlined zippered pouches in years. And I've got so much fabric. I also want to cater to those people that don't want to spend so much money. I'm going to spend today making up heaps of these little bags from swatch samples and just add a few extra sales to my handmade range in the shop. You don't need to have any fancy machines at all. For the first few years that I was sewing upholstery fabric, I just used a really old clunky Janome sewing machine, my clunky old overlocker, and didn't have industrial machines at all. So stick around and I will show you how I make this little pouch very simply, no frills. Let's get to it. All right, this is the piece of fabric that I'm going to be using today. It's one of the sample pieces, and I've removed all the paper, well, as much as I can. So I do have a little bit on the sides here. I will be using my overlocker for this project. and I'm not worried about the yellowing of the fabric either, because that's not going to be seen. The only thing we need is one piece of fabric and one zip. The zip needs to be as wide as your piece of fabric. We won't be using the metal bar on the end here, we'll trim that off later, but we will be leaving this end on. If you're using a continuous zip, you don't need to have these metal clips at all. This is just because we're using a regular dress zip. And I'm just using a number 3, which is the lighter weight zip. And I'm doing that because it helps the corners sit a little bit nicer, because I'm not putting tabs on this. Remember, this is just a really quick, cheap way to make up some zippered pouches, but these sell really well. Okay, I mentioned that we're going to be using our overlocker. An overlocker is the same as a serger in other countries. I'm going to overlock all of the edges. I've already put my label on the front here. This fold, which is what you see on your sample boards, you can iron that if you want to, but it's not necessary. There's still a little bit of paper at the top here. I'll be chopping that off when I overlock this, which will mean that there's not much fabric left in the fold, and that fold, when I top stitch, will actually be stitched flat. Let's go and overlock these edges. I do have mine set up for 2 needles. It really doesn't matter whether you use 3 or 4 threads. Because we're not putting a lining, it's really just to neaten up the edges. So I'll trim off just the outside edge, and that will trim off most of that paper underneath. And then just continue around until you've done all 4 sides. I usually do the top edge last because that's where that little fold is. And I'll use the edge of my foot, run that up along the fold, and that will get rid of enough of that paper on the outside. And then I'll trim off all the threads. Now you'll notice that all I did was cut off the overlocking threads. I didn't tie them back into the seam. If you're concerned about the thread unravelling, there's a product called Fray Stop or Fray Check. You can just run a very small amount right on the very edge that you've cut off, and you can do that on all 4 corners. But I actually don't even do this. When I sew my seams in, the threads will secure all of those bits anyway. So you don't have to go and do that unless you really feel like you need to. Because of course then you have to wait for it to dry. I've used white overlocking thread on this, and for all of my bags I'll usually use the one colour. In a case like this I would use black for these ones here, and then I would go and use a fawn or a white for all of the others. The reds would probably get done in a fawn to match the other. And I do this to save time. I don't even use double-sided tape for these. These are that quick to make. There's not much love that goes into them. Open your zip up, and we're going to place the zipper coil or the lumpy side faced down onto our fabric and line up this top edge with the overlocked edge of your fabric. And one of the reasons why I do leave the metal teeth on and use this is it gives me a good guide and helps me with my seam allowance as well. So if you line up the top edge of your zipper tape with the edge of your fabric, you can do this for every one of your bags that you make. It's just an easy way to remember. Then you don't have to worry about any measurements. Fold that bit of tape over, and we'll start sewing here all the way to the end. Once we've done that, you'll flip that over and you'll top stitch. At the machine, I'm using the same colour thread for all of the pieces that I work with. Once again, these have all been top stitched with a fawn or a cream coloured thread today, and I'll just use that same colour for the sewing up of the sides and also the top stitching. I don't worry about matching the colour to the zip either. Remember, these are just a simple bag. So you'll sew that side in place. Whilst you're at the machine, you can also do the other side. So all you need to do is just bring that across and line up the zipper tape with the edge of your fabric, just like we did on the other side, and flip that over, and you'll sew both of those edges in place. What I do at the machine is I'll do this side first. I don't worry about clips at all. Then I'll top stitch. Then I'll do this side, and then I will top stitch that as well. Let's go do that now. You'll need your zipper foot for this. I'm just using a regular sew-all thread and my 90 or size 14 sewing machine needles. I don't usually use clips because I just have a whole bunch of fabric sitting at the machine. Fold the end over, place your presser foot over the top of that fold here, do a couple of stitches. That will secure that fold in place. Then we can back stitch, and then you can go forward and sew all the way to the end. So you've got that nice fold over the top there. Fold the zip over. So I just start sewing at the end of my zipper tape. That edge is done. And now I will take this end of the zip, place that face down to the other side, line up that top edge, flip that end over, place that under my machine, and then back stitch, and then go forward. Now that that side's done, all we need to do is top stitch. Fold the zip over, take this top layer of fabric and just move that out of the way. Place your fabric underneath your zip presser foot. So there we have our zip in place. We've got the end of the tape folded under. Bring your bag inside out, and the tail end of your zip, bring that in. We're now going to sew the sides closed. Line up the top edge of your zip. So if I just move that out of the way, you'll see the folded edge of the fabric at the top here is lined up, and also straight down here, just with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance. You can do less if you like. I usually stitch right on the edge of the overlocking stitch. When I take this to the machine, I'm going to put the needle down first, just to secure those layers. Then I'll back stitch a couple of times and sew to the end with a back stitch. Once again, I don't usually use clips because I'm at the machine doing 10 or 20 or 30 of these at a time. Secure that in place. Make sure your zip is open at least halfway from here, and then line up the middle bars at the top and line up the folded edge of your fabric on the side, and we'll sew down this edge as well. And once again, I will sew directly over the top of the overlocking that I can see, but I know you can't. We're not doing any box corners or anything. Once you've sewn up both side edges, you trim the zip off and you're finished. Let's go and do that now. Before I lower my presser foot, I'll bring the needle down, and that will secure both layers of fabric, and it'll stop it from shifting as I start sewing. I'll do a couple of back stitches along here. That'll close up the teeth at the top, and we'll make sure that that stays nice and secure when you're using the bag. Sew all the way down to the end with a back stitch. And then we'll do the other side. Once again at this end, I'll line up the layers of fabric on the top, bring the needle down, then my foot, that's it, our bag's finished. Now that our bag is finished, the only thing left to do is to trim the end of the zip and turn this the right way out, poke out your corners. When you get to the closed end of your zip, just use your finger to push those edges up. So you've got a nice finished edge at the top there, and it sits fairly square. If you close up your bag, at this end here, it is a little bit untidy. What you can do is fold those seams open, place the open edges under your foot, and just sew it in place. And that will make it look a little better. And there we have today's little pouch. Wasn't that just so easy to make? On the outside, it looks just like any other lined pouch that you might purchase. The only difference is that there's no lining on the inside. Let's have a look at all of the other ones. So all of these here are from the same swatch family that I had pulled apart. Lots of great colours. Every single one of them has been made using the cream coloured thread for top stitching and assembly. And I've also used a cream or a white overlocking thread on the inside. And this little one is made out of that tiny piece of fabric that I showed you earlier. This was about the size of the little bags that I started making way back when I first started doing them. So here are 22 bags. When I made these, I did a time trial. It had been such a long time since I'd made them. I wanted to check and make sure that they were still financially viable for me. I spent 3 hours making 21 of these bags, and that included the time that it took to remove the paper from the back of the samples. So the removal of the paper, the overlocking, insertion of the zip, sewing up the side seams and putting the labels on took me 3 hours. And I got to make 21 of them. Now that's using my slow home overlocker. I can do them much quicker on my machines at the shop, but then I have interruptions with customers, so it balances out. That means I can make 7 of these in an hour, and I think I could easily make 10 of these if I don't have any interruptions. If I can make 7 of these in an hour and I sell these at $10 each, that's potentially $70 an hour that I'm earning just for my income to make these bags. Of course, you've got to factor in your hourly rate, machine maintenance, power, insurance, taxes, all of those sorts of things, and also the material that you actually purchase. So the zippers, they're about 20 or 30 cents each. It really depends on where you purchase them, and my labels I think are about 22 cents each. So I'm spending less than 50 cents in purchased product, and the rest of this is my time making up a $10 pouch. I think that's a pretty fabulous profit for these little bags. I don't know why I haven't made them in such a long time. I think I've just got carried away with trying to make better products and using up my samples, but I can use my samples up much quicker this way and make many more products. My hourly rate will be much better, and the customers actually love these cheaper products. I've had 2 people just in the last week remind me of these little pouches that I used to make, and I did have to quickly whip up some so that they could purchase them. I think I might go and spend the next few hours pulling apart some more sample boards and making up some more bags. I'm going to keep them the same price that I had them at about 6 or 7 years ago, $10 each, or 3 for $20. I'll put them in a basket and people can just rummage through them. I'll have my shop label on there, but I'm not putting my Australian made labels on there. I think these are just going to be my cheap and nasty version of my zippered pouches. For the price of a couple of coffees, they can have something that's going to last them much longer. And I reckon these will help me get over the line when Chris and I are competing with each other in the shop for our shop sales. So Chris, watch out, I'm coming for you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.